Great, well welcome. Thank everybody for coming. This is really, really great to see what a wonderful turnout we've had. Before I get started this evening, I do want to just take a quick moment and thank all of the Return Peace Corps volunteers for their service. So if you served as a Peace Corps volunteer, can you please stand up? Wonderful. It looks like we've got quite a few Return Peace Corps volunteers here tonight. So my name is Benjamin Morris, and I'm the on-campus Peace Corps recruiter here at the University of Michigan. I'm also a Return Peace Corps volunteer. I served in Ethiopia from 2011 to 2013 as a conservation natural resource management specialist. I was an environment volunteer. I'm also a graduate student here at the University of Michigan. I'm a dual degree student in the School of Natural Resources and Environment and the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy. It's such an honor to be part of these 2 days of events kicking off the 55th anniversary of the establishment of the Peace Corps. As many of you know, the Peace Corps started here at the University of Michigan on the steps of our very own Michigan Union 55 years ago. And it continues, that legacy continues with the volunteers that are currently serving around the world today. So tomorrow's events on the steps of the Union will touch on that legacy of service. And it will also touch on Peace Corps' bright future. This agency has recently implemented reforms to the application process, and the results have been overwhelming. I hope that all of you, our PCVs in your t-shirts that we gave you tonight, can come and show your support tomorrow at our events. You can come and hear some exciting news from Peace Corps Director Carrie Hessler-Radelet, as well as hear from University of Michigan leadership on some of the exciting new changes that are coming up. You can also come and see, as we can see here tonight, the really strong RPCV community we have here in Southeast Michigan. And this whole 55th anniversary celebration is really just an opportunity to celebrate the Peace Corps. And all of you that served, and all of you that are here as potential applicants, any family members or friends, this is a great event to really come together and come together for this service and really show our support. So tonight we'll be watching a great documentary. It's called A Passing of the Torch. It was originally produced for the 50th anniversary 5 years ago, but it's such an inspirational film, as you'll see in a little bit, and it really tells the story of Peace Corps and its conception here at the University of Michigan. So we really wanted to show it again and share it with you. But before we watch the film, we were lucky enough to hear from a few guest speakers and a few just guests in general that we have here tonight. And I have the honor of introducing the first one. As Peace Corps Associate Director for Volunteer Recruitment and Selection, Helen Lohman oversees all the agency's efforts to recruit, assess, and place volunteers in over 60 countries around the world. Previously, she served 3 years as Peace Corps Regional Director for Europe, Mediterranean, and Asia regions. And she also served as Country Director and Associate Director for the Peace Corps program in China. Ms. Lohman has also worked for AFS Intercultural Programs USA and Texas Natural Resource Conservation Commission, currently known as the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. She completed her undergraduate studies at Austin College in Sherman, Texas, and obtained a master's degree in International Studies from the University of Denver's Joseph Corbell School for International Studies. But like most of us, she got her start as a Peace Corps volunteer, serving in Thailand. So if we can all lend her a hand and welcome to the stage, Peace Corps Associate Director.
So Ben, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Wow, it's really an honor to be here tonight. here at the University of Michigan. This is sort of the starting of our celebration for over the next 2 days. I do want to take a moment just to thank Ben, to thank Bill Nolting, to thank Audrey Buswell, and everyone from the University of Michigan's International Center for all of their incredible work on this event and the programming for tomorrow. They really work tirelessly year-round to help us find talented, motivated volunteers, and we're very, very grateful for that help in getting us the best possible graduates from the University of Michigan. So I really can't think of a more fitting way to kick off this week's celebration of the anniversary of then Senator Kennedy's famous speech. The University of Michigan, as Ben already mentioned, is not only where the idea for the Peace Corps was born, it is also where students and staff took up JFK's call and laid the groundwork to develop the program that would later be known as the Peace Corps. The documentary that we're about to watch really does a beautiful job of capturing the spirit of that moment in 1960. After hearing that the presidential hopeful, Senator Kennedy, would be staying in Ann Arbor, 5,000 students, possibly more than 5,000 students, collected at the steps of the Michigan Union. And there had been no promise of a speech or remarks of any kind. Some of you might remember that the voting age at that time was actually 21, so they couldn't vote anyway. But Kennedy did not disappoint. He climbed the steps and he delivered the now iconic impromptu speech, culminating in a call for America's youth, asking them to serve their nation by serving those with pressing needs around the world. It was this speech that inspired a group of Michigan students to develop an action plan. And some of those students are here with us tonight. Their dedication to service and their belief that peace can be achieved by forging personal connections with communities far from our borders created the foundation for the Peace Corps. These values remain strong at the University of Michigan today, and they're reflected by the strength of the partnership between the University of Michigan and the Peace Corps. Michigan today boasts 6 Peace Corps Coverdale Fellows programs, 5 Masters International programs. And since the Peace Corps' founding, nearly 2,600 graduates of the University of Michigan have served in 139 countries around the world, tackling some of the world's most important challenges, from public health to food security to environmental protection and fostering the next generation of entrepreneurs. As we speak right now, volunteers are working alongside community health workers in Togo to track local health issues with the help of mobile phone apps, partnering with the private sector to sponsor business competitions for youth in the Dominican Republic, furthering gender equality through sports tournaments in Georgia, and designing text messaging platforms to help high school students in Nicaragua learn about reproductive health. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the late 80s, and I didn't do any of those things. Peace Corps is definitely changed, and it's definitely new and doing great stuff all around the world. The men and women who are drawn to Peace Corps are interested in not just imagining a better world, but actually rolling up their sleeves and doing something about it, just as many of you did as well. That commitment extends far beyond the 2 or 3 years volunteers spend overseas. It's actually lifelong. All of you bring your skills and experiences back home to make a difference right here in the US and inspire the next generation of volunteers. We have amazing returned volunteer associations all across the country, but the Southwest Michigan RPCV group is truly a model for what a group of people committed to Peace Corps' third goal can achieve. You all are the reason that the University of Michigan remains a top college for Peace Corps every year. And that Michigan, the state itself, is a top state for volunteers. Between your dinners and service projects, your social media activity, and your one-of-a-kind mentoring project, which connects future volunteers to those who have already served, you truly bring the world home to Michigan. On behalf of the agency, thank you for your continued service and continuing to promote Peace Corps' values and mission. And on that note, I want to turn our attention to 2 very special RPCVs that are with us this evening, Drs. Al and Judy Guskin. Al and Judy were graduate students here when President Kennedy made his famous visit to Ann Arbor 55 years ago. They took JFK's inspiring vision and turned it into reality, rallying Michigan students to commit a few years of service for the cause of peace. And I'm really thrilled to have the honor of introducing them today. In addition to playing a tremendous role as founders of the Peace Corps, Al and Judy have indirectly played a role in shaping the lives of countless people, including my own, in more ways than you can imagine. You see, shortly after laying the groundwork for the Peace Corps, they were invited to join the agency in Washington, D.C. to help develop the selection criteria for applicants and place volunteers abroad. 50 years later, in 2011, I had the honor of being appointed Associate Director of that very same office, inheriting their legacy. Al and Judy, your team did amazing work. Peace Corps still remains the gold standard for Americans who are drawn to service abroad. After working in DC, Al and Judy joined the first class of volunteers in Thailand, where I also happened to serve just a few years later. Following their return, both went on to receive their PhDs from the University of Michigan. And in the 1980s, they helped develop AmeriCorps Vista, where I also volunteered just a few years later. Al and Judy have each enjoyed distinguished careers in academia. Judy has taught courses in educational psychology, sociolinguistics, documentary filmmaking, and international television. Among her many accomplishments, Judy developed the first state-funded bilingual education program as a faculty member at Clark University. She also produced several documentary films and worked for many years consulting with multicultural schools. Al recently retired as chancellor at Antioch University, where he was the driving force in the creation of the first PhD program in leadership and change, of which I am hoping to graduate in a few years with my own PhD. I'm not really sure where I'd be if it hadn't been for these 2 people. The Guskins are the true embodiment of the Peace Corps spirit. They have worked tirelessly as advocates for social justice. They have strived to continuously break down communication barriers, and they have helped to empower countless people to be agents of change in their own communities. The effect of their work has rippled across countries and generations, and it is such an honor to be here with you both today. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Alcas.
Thank you. Judy will talk a little while. I have the honor of talking first. I will wear glasses because having turned 78 years old, I need glasses these days. Sorry. This is a wonderful documentary. I hadn't seen it in about maybe 4 years. I showed it to my present wife's uncle. We were married for 25 years. And he was 93 years old, and who was sharp as a tack. And he wanted to see the history, and so I showed it to him just a few days ago. And it brought tears to my eyes. So it's going to be, I think, a very special moment, hopefully for you as well as it is for me to see it again. I've been blessed with many years of being a president of the university, being a faculty member, creating your program. But there's nothing quite like the feeling that I have about what happened 55 years ago. It's hard to fathom that a group of students actually led to the creation of the Peace Corps. Usually, peace agencies are created by policy wonks, by politicians, by people in high status. I was a graduate student in social psychology in my 3rd year. And Judy was a graduate student, I believe, in educational psychology in Ann Arbor. And the fact that students could literally make a difference in 3.5 weeks and create an agency which 55 years later is still serving hundreds of thousands of people is just mind-boggling. So you do a lot of things in one's life, and at the age of 78 and retiring September 1st, that moment 55 years ago still stays with me in the most emotional way. One of the quotes I like to give is something that Sergeant Shriver, who was the first director of the Peace Corps, many of you probably know he was President Kennedy's brother-in-law. That's why President Kennedy appointed him the head of the Peace Corps, because he thought it would fail. And so he figured his brother-in-law could handle it. But the truth is that, according to Sergeant Shriver, and I agree with it, he said, it might still be just an idea, but for the affirmative response of those Michigan students and faculty. Possibly Kennedy would have tried it once more on some other occasion, but without a strong popular response, he would have concluded the idea was impractical or premature. That probably would have ended it right there. Instead, it was almost a case of spontaneous combustion. Actually, Kennedy wasn't sure about the Peace Corps until I think the students started to mobilize on the University of Michigan campus and throughout the state of Michigan through the AP. Michigan Daily was our local newsletter almost. I mean, it followed us, and so they had an AP wire, and it went all over the state. And students at other universities started to organize. I didn't know that at the time, actually. But what happened was 3 weeks later, through a number of things that you'll see in the film, which is just amazing how the stars aligned, Kennedy gave a speech at the Cow Palace, I think it was the evening of November 2nd, the election was November 8th. And it's the first time he makes a public commitment to the Peace Corps. And some people maintain that since he won only by 120,000 votes, that actually the commitment to the Peace Corps could have influenced the election. I don't know if it's true, but it could have happened. The Michigan Students Act were critical to the creation of the Peace Corps. And one of the things that I like to, a quote I like to often talk about, is from Margaret Mead, famous anthropologist. And she says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, is the only thing that ever has." I believe that the Peace Corps exists 55 years later because a group of students presented with an opportunity chose to act. And all of us, all of you who have served in the Peace Corps have also and served in VISTA and served in a lot of other important activities, have had the courage to act and make a difference in the world, to create a more peaceful and better place. This is indeed worthy of a celebration. Thank you.
I feel lucky to have been involved with Peace Corps here in Ann Arbor, during my service in Thailand, and right now, because I know that I have an opportunity to speak to each and every one of you who have served. I would feel a certain bond, a certain friendship that's magic, in a way, in terms of the work that we did, the commitment we had. I just wanted to add a few things, because I don't know how many people here were early in the Peace Corps or later in the Peace Corps. I thought I wanted to tell you about 3 people who we were fortunate to have part of this story, who made this story happen, who are in the film. And I'll give a brief introduction to them. Maybe you know more about them than I do, but I've met them and I want to tell you about them. Ted Sorensen was called the intellectual blood bank by JFK. He was a man who wrote his speeches. He started very young. Ted Sorensen was 24 when he started working with JFK. He helped write his first book, Profiles in Courage, which I read at 18 years old and found interesting as an undergraduate. He went on to work through the campaign and even after Kennedy's death. One of the things that he knew was that JFK really wanted to change the Foreign Service. And he really wanted to help the developing world. So many new countries were being created at that time, over 100. And JFK had gone to Africa, several countries in Africa. So some people joke that, you know, he kept talking about Africa, Africa, Africa all the time. But right at the moment when the students organized, there was Ted Sorensen working close by. And when Millie Jeffrey, you'll hear, tried to get a speechwriter to talk to Kennedy about what the students were doing, she sent it to one guy whose name I won't share, and he said, "No way, not interested, crazy idea." And then she went to Ted Sorensen, and he was the right one in the right place at the right time. An amazing man. We met him at the Toledo airport when we met Kennedy, and he turned to Al and he said, after Kennedy left, he said, "Kennedy forgot his speech, why don't you take it to him?" And of course, we had no idea how to get around Toledo. But instead, we spent time talking to Ted Sorensen and talking to Richard Goodwin, who was another speechwriter. Doris Goodwin's husband, you might know of her in her Lincoln history books. Her husband, Richard, was there as a speechwriter as well that night, that afternoon we were having coffee. Now, Ted Sorensen probably wrote the Cow Palace speech. He definitely wrote the inaugural address, although he doesn't claim he wrote that phrase. He says Kennedy wrote that phrase that we all love so much. He was someone who I interviewed for the 35th anniversary on a film that I helped make for Peace Corps. And afterwards I went up and chatted with him, and he said, "You know, Judy, my daughter Juliet, she's in the Peace Corps. She's in Morocco." And she was doing maternal and child health. And guess what? She was in Morocco doing that project and spent the rest of her life, even though she's a lawyer, working on social justice and health issues. In 2014, she was in Mali, working on health issues. So whether it came from her father or it came from all of us and our excitement, I don't know. But I think that we owe a lot to Ted Sorensen. He died right after this interview. The other person I wanted to mention is Senator Harris Wofford. Senator Harris Wofford I met when I was 20 and he was 30. He was a good friend of Sarge Schreiber, and he and Sarge Schreiber were in the Civil Rights Advisory Group during the campaign. That's what he was involved in. First summer, he was there. From the very beginning, he worked on a task force to help set up the Peace Corps. Because he went to India. And he went with his wife, Claire, and they studied the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi, and that changed his life. So things happened to them before Peace Corps. He went on to establish, I went on working with Vista, but I did work with him later on in the 60s as well in terms of the Peace Corps program. During that time of the campaign, he was the one who got Martin Luther King's wife. Got a call to her from Kennedy that had a lot to do with the election as well, because Martin Luther King was in jail at the time. So he did a lot. Very quickly, he was the director of the Ethiopia project. He went out in the field. A lot of us do that. At that point, we weren't coming in from the field to headquarters, but we went out to the field as soon as we could. And he went out into the field and then was associate director. I have to skip some things. He set up the AmeriCorps. He was CEO of the National Corporation for National Service. His book of Kennedy and King's tells the true story of what happened, because he called Al and I and said, I want to get it right. What really happened, with that group? And so he called us. He received, in 2015, he received the Presidential Citizen Medal from our president. Very high award, indeed. He started the Harris Wofford Global Citizen Award for someone who Peace Corps volunteers influenced, and who then went on to be very successful in their country. He feels now that Peace Corps people should be employed. He's 89 and working for us. He just recently, a few weeks ago, attended a meeting at the Aspen Institute about the employability of all volunteers. And basically he, John F. Kennedy, and Sarge Schreiber all wanted a much bigger Peace Corps than ever we had. So he's working on a project now to make service, it's called the Franklin Project, a cultural thing in America. Everybody should serve for a year. And that may happen if some people mobilize to make it happen. Who knows, maybe right here. Sarge Schreiber, how many of you ever met him? Dynamic. What a salesman, what a man with heart. I love that he called it open-hearted. We didn't have to only be open-minded, we had to be open-hearted, okay? When we had a big conference at American University, I had the pleasure and honor of introducing him for his very first talk about Peace Corps. And he was nervous before all these students, but he was great right then, right away. He earned a Purple Heart for his time in the Navy. He was in the experiment in international living. So that kind of changed him a bit too. And then he took on the war on poverty. So he wore two hats at the same time. And I was working in some ways at that time in both places, Peace Corps and Vista. I want to share with you a few of his statements, just in case you've never heard him speak. Seek to understand and serve others on their own terms. Interesting. He said to his students at Yale, break your mirrors. Yes, indeed, shatter the glass. In our society, we are so self-absorbed. Begin to look less at yourself and more at each other. Now, what would he say about all the selfies? It's not what you get out of life that counts, but what you give to life. We cannot continue the tremendous story of America if we fight harder at denying our diversity than we do at seeking out all the talent we can obtain from the greatness of our diversity. Nice, especially now. Peace is much more than the absence of war. Peace requires the simple but powerful recognition that what we have in common as human beings is more important and crucial than what divides us. He said to return volunteers, PCVs, you stay as you are. Be work at home as you've worked abroad. Okay? Humbly, persistently, intelligently. Weep with those who are sorrowful. Care for those who are sick. Serve your neighbors, serve your cities, serve the poor. Join others to serve. Serve, serve, serve. That's the challenge. For in the end, it will be the servants who save us all. And that's the Peace Corps.
Thank you all so much. That was all very, very touching. Yeah, and I'm just so excited to see where tomorrow takes us. But first, we're going to start this film. So settle in and enjoy.
Wow, what an amazing video, right? Every time I see that, I get chills. I mean, there's so many different moments in that video that really bring out very, very fresh memories of when we were going through the application process, when we were serving, when we were even thinking about serving. I think the way that Peace Corps was established is really reflected in the way that the Peace Corps, the RPCV community, interacts today. And it's definitely obvious tonight with all the returned Peace Corps volunteers here in this room. And I think that looking back and seeing that it did start with this network of people, and then just to see how the dominoes fell and how the torch was passed over and over again, it's really moving to then come back and see, once again in this room here tonight and all over the country, all over the world, this same notion is still happening. And I can tell you with my experience over the last year and a half here in the University of Michigan Peace Corps office, it's definitely still alive. We have hundreds of students come into our office and come to our information sessions and come in, and now even if the application process has changed, there's still a lot of things that are very similar about why people want to serve. And it really embodies what Peace Corps is all about and what JFK originally challenged us to do. So that kind of concludes the rest of this event. I wanted to make sure that we were clear on the times of everything for tomorrow. So tomorrow the events start at noon on the steps of the Michigan Union. So there we will have current director, Peace Corps Director Carrie Hessler-Radelet. And we also have other University of Michigan representatives. So it'll be a great event to come. We'd love to see all of you there. Another one of our events we have starts at 2 o'clock, and this is an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, signing between the Peace Corps and the University of Michigan, really just to reiterate that relationship, that really strong relationship that Peace Corps has with the university. President Schlissel will be there, along with the director of Peace Corps. And then our final event, Success in Service, will start at 3:30 over at the Michigan Union in the Pendleton Room. And this is really going to be a great opportunity to hear more of these stories. So we've got a great group of returned Peace Corps volunteers across the spectrum. They've prepared really amazing stories about their service. So definitely come and join us tomorrow. We'd really love to see all of you there. And then in terms of tonight, I know that some of you are going to go home and watch the debate, so we want to get out of here. But that being said, we can move outside of this room and we can have a little informal reception where we can continue this conversation. But once again, I just wanted to thank you for coming, and thank you to obviously Al and Judy and Helen for their contributions tonight, and just obviously over the last 55 years, it's been quite a journey for everyone involved. But thank you again for coming.